Hey guys, Sue's here. Welcome back to another What's for Dinner on Keto. This is what my husband and I eat on a keto diet to lose and maintain weight, doing couples keto together. If you guys are new here, please hit that subscribe button and join the crew. And if you are returning crew members, welcome back. We make these What's for Dinner on Keto videos every single Sunday to motivate you, help inspire you to get your keto meal prep on. Let's get into the video. I wanna catch the wave. First up, I made an adaptation of Carolyn Ketchum over at All Day a Dream About Foods low-carb cauliflower shepherd's pie. My husband notoriously hates shepherd's pie, but I was able to get him to eat some of this, probably begrudgingly because he loves me. So to start with, I took 2 pounds of ground beef, added it to a saute pan over medium heat. She does use lamb in her recipe, but I don't really cook with lamb, so I opted to do the beef. So I'm chopping it up with my handy dandy meat chopper upper that I always have linked down below. Once I have all the meat browned, I'm just adding it to an oval casserole dish. Not really sure what size this is, but probably most of you have a dish similar to this in your cabinet. So grab that and use it. I am using a slotted spoon to do this so I can leave the majority of the grease in the pan. And then I just kind of smoothed it out. Now returning my pan to the heat, I am adding 1/4 cup chopped onion and a teaspoon of sea salt along with 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. And I'm just gonna cook that until my onion starts getting translucent, probably about 5 minutes. To that, I'm adding a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic and mixing it up and cooking it for about a minute more. Now I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of coconut flour, and I'm going to whisk that in, and it's going to form a roux. And every time I say roux, it reminds me of Jess. What's up, Jess? Over at Jess and the Boys. And I'm just going to whisk that together really well. Now in her recipe, she adds 1/2 cup of dry red wine. I didn't have any on hand, so I opted to use a sherry cooking vinegar, and it was good. It did give it a little bit of tart taste, which I think helped my husband eat it because he doesn't like shepherd's pie. But I think if you used regular red wine, it would be a little bit more savory than tart. So I'm just whisking that together really well. And in her recipe, she also uses 2 tablespoons of fresh rosemary. I am not a rosemary fan. I generally will leave it out of recipes, but for this, I did decide to add a little and just used a tablespoon of dried rosemary leaves. And I did turn the heat off at this point. As you can see, it's simmering pretty good there. And whisk that together. And then I'm just adding the whole mixture to the top of the ground beef in the casserole dish. And I did go ahead and kind of smooth that out. Now to a food processor, and I love this one by Hamilton Beach. It's cheap and efficient. And again, anything that I ever mention like that I use in the kitchen, I usually have in the description box. So I took about 1 pound of cauliflower, steamed in the microwave, added it to the food processor, along with a teaspoon of minced garlic, 1/4 cup of sour cream, 2 tablespoons butter, 1/2 teaspoon salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And I'm putting my little scraper in there, and I'm just going to process this all the way up until it is a nice creamy consistency like mashed potatoes would be, but with cauliflower. And you can see here that it is nice and creamy. I'm just gonna put it right on top of that meat and gravy mixture that we have in the dish. And just look at this. I mean, it looks like mashed potatoes and it spreads like mashed potatoes. Unbelievable. So I'm just spreading it all the way over it, just like you would frosting. And then I'm topping this with some fresh grated extra sharp cheddar cheese. I didn't measure here, but I think I probably used about 1 cup of shredded cheese. And then I'm gonna pop this whole thing in the oven at 400 for 25 minutes. This is what it looks like when it comes out. Super, super duper yummy. And this is what it looks like plated up. I did put a little pinch of parsley on there to just, for look's sake, because, come on, gotta make it pretty. This is great comfort food. I really dug it. Again, my husband hates shepherd's pie, and he even ate one big plate of it, again, because he loves me. But if he ate it, I would say it passes the test for a keto comfort food. Next up, a dish that my husband absolutely loved, keto beef with broccoli. I based this on, adapted it from a recipe by delish.com. I'll link the original down below. But saute pan, medium-high heat. I added a pound of beef. They use flank steak. I think this is probably a round roast that I sliced thinly. I just sliced it up thinly and then had it in the freezer in a pound bag. I'm adding some ground black pepper and a couple pinches of sea salt to my steak, and then I'm just gonna brown it all really well. Get it cooked to the temperature that I like. After it is, I'm going to transfer all of it to a separate dish, including the juices, and then returning my pan to the heat, I'm adding a half a cup of liquid aminos, 2 heaping teaspoons of minced garlic, a tablespoon of ginger minced out of the fridge, and 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. And then I'm just going to cook all of that really well, bring it to a simmer. And then I'm adding a 1 pound bag of organic broccoli from Costco. I did go ahead and steam this a tiny bit in the microwave before I added it. I think I steamed it for like 3 minutes. So it's still really firm, but not frozen. And I am breaking up these florets with my spatula because they are pretty big. And I like, if I'm going to eat broccoli, I like it smaller, you know. And once I have those all cooked down, I'm adding my steak back to the pan, and I'm just going to cook all of this together. I think I simmered it maybe another 5 minutes just to make sure my steak was back to temperature all the way through and everything was coated with the sauce really, really well. Here it is all plated up to serve it. I did sprinkle it with a little bit of sesame oil and a little pinch of sesame seeds. This was super good. I think it was even better left over than it was the first night because all the flavors just kind of marry together, you know, when you leave stuff in the fridge. And it was super, super good. Next time I think I'll make a double batch. Next up, yummy, 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 low carb cabbage chicken enchiladas. These are so good. So to start with, you're going to take about a medium head of green cabbage and you're going to core it. I didn't show that on there. If anybody needs to see someone do that, I'll make a video on it. Comment down below. But core it, put it in a big pot of water, and I'm boiling it. And then you can see I'm just taking my tongs. And as it boils, I'm separating the cabbage leaves off. I used to do this with my fingers and I got smarter. And now I use silicone tongs. But as I pull the cabbage leaf off, you can see I'm just kind of pressing it down in the water for an additional 30 seconds to just make sure that it is nice and soft all the way around. And I'm going to do the whole cabbage like this and put the leaves in a separate dish. Now I'm adding some olive oil to my pan. I only meant to add a tablespoon. I added too much, so don't be like me. Had to empty some of that out. And to that, I'm going to add 1 red bell pepper that I diced up in my little chopper and an onion. Now they add a whole large onion, but because I'm going to use a red, enchilada sauce in this recipe, I wanted to cut back on the carbs some, so I only added a quarter of a large onion chop to this and just made it heavier on the peppers, which have about the same amount of carbs, I think, peppers and onions. But to that, I'm adding a little bit of sea salt and just mixing that all up. And I'm just going to cook this until my veggies start getting soft. And now I'm adding a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic, and then seasoning mix of 2 teaspoons chili powder and 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. And again, just stirring it all up till everything is well incorporated. Now I'm adding 3 cups of shredded cooked chicken breast that I had in the fridge. This is super easy. I just take a couple chicken breasts and throw them in the Instant Pot for like 20 minutes and they are done, and you don't even hardly have to touch them to shred them. They're so tender. To that, I'm adding a cup of the lowest carb enchilada sauce I could find. It just comes in a small can, and then I'm gonna mix that all together really, really well until everything is fully coated. And then the original recipe, she adds, I think, 2 tablespoons of fresh chopped cilantro. Not a huge cilantro fan and really just don't have any on hand and don't want to buy a whole bunch of it. So I did 1 tablespoon of dried cilantro. That worked just fine for me, but do whatever you prefer. I did go ahead and cut the heat off on this as I mixed that in. And now I'm just taking a casserole dish. I think it's a 9 by 13. And my cabbage leaves that are now cooled down. And I'm just going to scoop that chicken filling into those. And some have more, some have less. So just kind of eyeball it. And then you're going to fold it in, the little shorter ends in like you would a burrito, and then roll it up. And I'm going to show you how I do a couple of these so you can just kind of see that technique. But it's really, really easy. You just roll in the little short ends and then roll it all the way up. And you can make them as, you know, as big or small as you want. You can roll them loose, roll them tight. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to plop these all in and cover them with cheese anyway. So here they are all rolled up. Now in that can of enchilada sauce, there's about 1/3 of a cup remaining. I'm going to drizzle that over each of those. And then I'm going to top it with some pre-grated Monterey Jack cheese, pre-shredded, I should say. And I'm doing, I would say, just about 1/2 cup of that. And then I had some extra sharp cheddar cheese that I shredded myself, which gets rid of those extra carbs. And I'm adding another 1/2 cup of that probably on top. And then I'm going to pop this whole thing in the oven at 350 for about 20 minutes. Here it is when it comes out. You could cook it longer if you want your cabbage to be just totally tender. I wanted mine to be a little crisp still. And this was the perfect temperature for that. Now to plate it, I topped it with some sour cream, a little bit more cilantro, some hot sauce, and some frozen avocado pieces that I had in the freezer. I just took them out and left them on the counter while I was cooking, and by the time I was done cooking, they were good to go on there. This was super duper delicious, perfect for doing your keto meal prep, and I totally redeemed myself in my husband's eyes by making this because he loves anything Mexican food related. Next up, I did an adaptation of 2 Slevers Keto Italian Sausage Kale Soup. I say it's an adaptation, but I really just totally changed the recipe altogether, but I'll still link it down below because it was my inspiration. So to Instant Pot on saute, I added 1 pound of Italian sausage, ground. Make sure you always check your carb count on any type of sausage because they will slip carbs in there on you. And I'm just going to brown that and mash it, and I'm not worried about getting it all the way done, just worried about breaking it up. To that I added some salt and some pepper, which the recipe didn't add any seasonings, guys, so I don't really know how theirs would have tasted without any seasoning, but did add a lot of salt and pepper to it. A cup of diced onion, 3 heaping teaspoons of minced garlic, and then I'm just going to keep chopping that up with my meat chopper upper until it's well mixed. And then I'm adding a 12-ounce bag of frozen cauliflower florets and a 12-ounce bag of frozen kale. And on top of that, I'm adding 3 cups of chicken broth. The original recipe, they added plain water, and I really just don't even know how that would taste because this recipe came out tasting really well the way I did it, but it could have still used some spice, you know? So then I'm just cooking it on high pressure for 3 minutes, and the recipe says to do a quick release after that, but I don't like doing that with soups because it tends to sputter and spurt and go everywhere, and I wasn't rushed on time. So you can see there, I let it naturally release for most of it and only had a tiny bit left to release by the time I came back to it. And then I'm just going to mix that all up. Now the cauliflower is so tender at this point that I'm just going to take the spoon and kind of break it up because I don't like huge cauliflower florets in my soup, but I do want it to still have some chunky, kind of substance to it. So I'm just going to break those apart with the spoon a little. And then I'm slowly going to add a half a cup of heavy whipping cream to this. And I did leave my whipping cream sitting out on the counter while this was cooking so that it could get to room temperature, because I just think that mixes into the hot soup better. And I'm just constantly stirring while I do this and letting those fats really mix together well. If you didn't want your soup to be as fatty, you could brown your sausage on the side and drain any excess grease before you added it to your Instant Pot, but I didn't find it to be too greasy. I found it to be just right to really fill me up and leave me feeling satiated. And you're just going to mix it until you have the perfect creamy, awesome consistency. And then to plate it up, I did top it with a little bit of shredded Parmesan cheese. This was super delicious. Like I said, it had just the right amount of flavor to it. It could have used even more spicing up. I wanted to leave it a little bit more bland to be kid friendly, because we've had round 2 of upper respiratory illness in our house this week, and I wanted the kids to be able to eat this and get some of that kale in them. But next time I think I would just add some red pepper flakes to it as well. Again, original recipes linked down below, but use caution. I think if you cook it the way the original one is, it's going to be super duper bland. So at least add, your broth and your salt and pepper. So there you go, guys. That's this week's What's for Dinner on Keto. Easy keto meals to meal prep by and to help you follow a keto diet and live a keto lifestyle. If you liked this video, please give us a thumbs up. It encourages us to keep making more videos. And do me a favor and share this with your friends. Share this with anybody that you know that's looking for low-carb recipes or that's looking for easy keto meals to make while following their keto diet. Till next week. Bye, guys.
I always do that, and I know it.